The Beverly Hillbillies.
Could have whooped you if you hadn't tripped me.
When I was little, every evening after running home from school, I always stopped by my neighbour uncle's house, the man who owned the only black and white TV in the neighbourhood. The small room was always warm and stuffy, and the sound of the antenna interference crackled set as if it was getting angry. Yet just hearing the opening music of the Beverly Hillbillies, all of us kids immediately sat still, eyes glued to the grainy screen. Back then, no one thought about ratings, no one analysed the content. We just laughed, just waited for Granny to get angry or for Jethro to make the next silly mistake. But later, when I grew up, I realised that those seemingly simple scenes actually had a whole behind the scenes full of strange stories. You won't believe it when you find out that one actress actually slammed Max Baer Jr. on the head during filming so hard the crew had to stop and check if he was still conscious. Or that another cast member openly sabotaged a colleague's political campaign out of personal grudges, fueling a long-running feud behind the scenes. And the biggest shock of all is the real reason the Beverly Hillbillies was wiped off television, despite still ranking among the top-rated shows nationwide. Today, let's reopen the door to that time to discover 20 secrets that few people have ever heard about a show that seemed carefree, but whose behind the scenes had more surprises than you might think. 20. Max Baer. Jr. sues CBS for using his character's name without permission. Back in the day, whenever Jethro appeared on TV, families across America would burst into laughter, as if that goofy boy was standing right there in their living room. He was simple silly in just the right way, and somehow helped millions of people shake off the weight of a long day. So when Max Baer Jr.'s lawsuit exploded, many viewers felt as if a piece of their old memories had been dragged back into the present, just not in the way anyone wanted. Everything began in the simplest way during a drive across Nevada. Baer spotted a chain of restaurants with a big sign that read, Jethro's. He pulled over, stared at it for a long moment, and finally muttered in disbelief, I never agreed to let anyone use that name. When he reviewed the contracts, Baer discovered that his character's name had been used commercially without his permission. And so the lawsuit was filed immediately. One lawyer on his team recalled, the issue wasn't just the name, it was the fact they treated Jethro's image as if it belonged to no one. But things became even messier when a shocking detail surfaced part of Season 1, and the early episodes of Season 2 had slipped into the public domain because CBS forgot to renew the copyright. This mistake flooded the market with cheap DVD releases, many of them even swapping out the original music because they couldn't afford the licensing fees. One distributor bluntly said, "We're following the law." Baer refused to accept that. In one tense meeting, he declared, "If that name is tied to me for life, I deserve the right to control how it's used." The half-legal, half-chaotic situation forced CBS to dig through its entire archive of copyright documents from scratch. 19. The reason the Beverly Hillbillies was erased even though its ratings were still high. I still remember how our whole family would eat dinner earlier than usual just to catch the Beverly Hillbillies. The TV was tiny, sometimes full of static, yet my parents, grandparents and all my siblings would squeeze together eating fruit and laughing until our stomachs hurt. Maybe that's why on the day the show was cancelled, despite being number one in the ratings, I felt as if a quiet piece of my childhood had been taken away. It wasn't until I grew older that I learned the real reason. In a short meeting at CBS, there was no shouting and no arguments, just a few cold sentences that ended a legend. One executive said, "Our target audience now has to be young urban viewers," someone else asked. "But what about the rural shows? Their ratings are still strong." The reply stunned everyone. Wrong age group. A few days later, they called it the Rural Purge, a mass removal of all rural-themed programs. The Beverly Hillbillies, even while topping national ratings, was placed on the chopping block alongside Green Acres and Petticoat Junction. A writer recalled, "We were in the middle of planning the next season when the cancellation notice dropped on the table, like someone turning off the lights mid-conversation." A crew member sighed. "None of us thought the show would end like this, just because it didn't match the network's new image." The irony is that while audiences adored the show, critics were merciless. Some reviews at the time called Hillbillies painful to watch, flat, or even questioned how a show this bizarre could attract millions every week. Yet viewers kept watching so much so that the show earned 7 Emmy nominations, proving that what touches the audience's heart doesn't always align with the tastes of the critics. What I remember most isn't just a television show. It's the feeling of an entire family laughing together, waiting for a new episode, sharing a simple kind of joy that no modern technology can truly replace. Sometimes, as audiences, don't need a show that's on trend. We just need one that makes us feel warm inside. 18. Filming location. Super cheap, only $500 a day. Every time I watched the Beverly Hillbillies, I always wondered where that luxurious mansion in the show was located in real life. Back then, it felt like a place that only existed on screen. But the truth turned out to be quite different. The mansion actually exists in real life, and it's located in Bel Air, not Beverly Hills. The owner rented it out to the production crew, with one condition: do not reveal the address. The producers reassured him immediately. "Don't worry, no one will find out." The rental fee was only about $500 per day, a number that would shock anyone considering the size and value of the mansion. But that promise of secrecy didn't last long. Neighbours started getting suspicious when equipment trucks and crew members showed up week after week. One security guard recalled, "Someone came by and asked, 'Is this where Hillbillies is being filmed?' I had to pretend to fix a lock so I wouldn't have to answer." Rumours spread quickly. Within just a few weeks, fans were gathering at the gate every day. The homeowner complained I rented it out for peace and quiet, not for my place to turn into a tourist attraction. To regain control of the situation, the crew had to constantly change their shooting schedule. Some days, the director practically ordered shoot fast before the crowd shows up. A lighting crew member laughed as he recalled, "We had never set up scenes that fast in our entire lives." 17. Buddy Ebsen publicly sabotaged Nancy Culp's election campaign. I always thought Buddy Ebsen and Nancy Culp were close friends on screen because their chemistry in every scene was undeniable. I was especially impressed by the moments they shared together, with the harmony and connection between them serving as proof of a true friendship. However, when I learned that in real life Buddy Ebsen and Nancy Culp were actually enemies, I was both surprised and a little puzzled. When Culp decided to run for Congress, many people in the crew assumed the two would maintain polite attitudes as the unwritten rule of Hollywood in the 60s. But Buddy unexpectedly went on the radio and said directly, "I don't think Nancy is suitable for that position." Someone in the studio quietly asked, "Are you sure you want to broadcast that?" Buddy simply replied, "I say what I believe." When she listened back to the broadcast, Culp stayed silent and said one sentence, "I will remember this." A technician said that the entire set froze. That day, the atmosphere so heavy that anyone walking through paused. In Hollywood, at that time, it was nearly unheard of for one actor to publicly oppose a co-star. A crew member recalled Nancy was very restrained, but her eyes that day could not hide anything. That small incident spread through the studio hallways within hours, and from that point on, their relationship never returned to what it was. 16. The record of climbing to rank number 1, the fastest in history. When the first episode aired, CBS only hoped the show would stay stable for a few weeks. No one imagined an explosion was waiting ahead. The ratings report sent to the control room made the whole team freeze. In the third week, the name Beverly Hillbillies jumped straight to number 1. A coordinator said, "I thought the meter was broken." The editor next to him looked at the chart and said, "No, it's correct." The irony is that at the moment the show accelerated, the fastest, the United States had just gone through a major shock, the assassination of President Kennedy. Many people were unsure if the audience still had the mood to watch comedy. But when the statistics came in, the answer was very clear. Viewers came to the show as a place to breathe. A production supervisor recalled they needed something light, simple, not forced. And Hillbillies accidentally became that. On set, the crew received the news during a break. Max Baer Jr. laughed. 3 weeks. What shortcut did we take? Buddy Ebsen replied, no shortcut, just the right time. The overwhelming success forced CBS to adjust its schedule, while the writing team exclaimed, we have to keep this pace, even though we don't understand how it happened so fast. 15. Granny really did hit Jethro on the set. In the days before special effects or safety padding, everything on screen was done for real, and that simplicity created the warm feeling of a time long gone. What few people know is that Irene Ryan, who played Granny, actually hit Max Baer Jr. in most scenes. Not because she was too immersed in the role, but because Baer himself suggested, just hit me for real? I can take it. Ryan laughed and replied, all right, you said it yourself. The director behind the camera sometimes reminded Irene, take it easy. But whenever the camera rolled, the smacks still landed firmly, making the whole set burst into laughter. A crew member said that once Max rubbed his head and joked, if I keep this up, I'll qualify for lightweight boxing. Ryan gently replied, the audience has to believe Granny is really strict. Back then, direct sound recording was normal. The sound of wood hitting a head, heavy breathing. The scraping of shoes on the floor were all real audio. A cameraman remembered forever. Mrs. Ryan was small, but her wrist was impressively strong. Every swing was very precise. Those details show the straightforward nature of classic television, where actors believed that only doing things for real could make the audience at home feel close. And also, from those seemingly simple scenes, the crew began to run into many stranger behind-the-scenes stories. 14. The oil discovery was not scientifically accurate at all. The scene where Jed shoots into the ground and oil bursts up was one everyone remembered. But during technical discussions, the geology consultants often laughed when mentioning it. One person once said, directly in a meeting, oil does not sit under the foothills. It doesn't exist like this. The director heard and only replied, I know, but it's a fun detail and it works well on screen. In reality, crude oil usually appears in plains deserts or continental shelves. A technician remembered the initial discussion. Should we make it more realistic? The writer answered, no. The audience needs an immediate wow moment from the first minute. To create the oil burst effect, the crew used a black mixture pumped through underground pipes placed beneath fake soil. When the camera rolled, the director shouted, pump it up, and the liquid shot up like the real thing. In one test, the pressure was so strong that the whole crew was soaked from head to toe. Max Baer Jr. watched and joked, if that were real oil, we'd all be millionaires. The effects supervisor could only shake his head, I wish. Although not scientifically accurate, that detail still became an iconic opening moment. But those not correct, but still done choices were only the beginning of the surprises to come, including a female actress who appeared in 15 episodes, but whom the audience almost never recognised. 13. Sharon Tate appeared in 15 episodes, but no one realised. For those who were loyal viewers of the show, the moments tied to each scene and the actors who left a deep impression on the audience are unforgettable. Among them, the name Sharon Tate is likely a nostalgic memory, even though at the time she was just an overlooked face lost among countless minor roles. Unless you paid close attention to each scene, it's hard to realise that she appeared 15 times throughout the series. The reason is simple. Tate wore a brown wig, dressed modestly, and was made up in a style that was completely different from the radiant image audiences would later recognise her for. One crew member even remembered their first encounter. She walked up, and I had to look twice to make sure it was Sharon. Throughout the filming, Sharon maintained a surprisingly humble demeanour, leaving no impression other than her quiet, simple presence. Once the director asked, "Would you like to change your hairstyle to make it easier to be recognised?" she simply smiled and replied, "No need, as long as the scene flows smoothly. That's what matters." Those simple moments now evoke deep, nostalgic memories, reminding those who witnessed them of a Sharon Tate who was modest, completely different from the dazzling image she would later become known for. Years later, when the Manson tragedy occurred, some crew members were stunned to realise they had worked with her far more than they had remembered. A writer sadly shared, "She was so gentle, she moved through the set like a breeze. None of us imagined we'd one day have to speak her name in such a painful context." Looking back now, the memories of Sharon Tate in that show feel like a gentle breeze filled with nostalgia for a time long past, and it's impossible not to feel sorrow when thinking of a star who burned out too soon. 12. The first season is in the public domain. The fact that a TV season lost its copyright simply because of forgotten paperwork sounds like a joke, but it is exactly what happened here. When reviewing the files, a young lawyer discovered the renewal section for Season 1, completely blank. He ran into the meeting room and said, "We didn't file the renewal." The department head looked up. "You mean it's in the public domain now?" The answer was only a silent nod. The consequences arrived immediately. A series of small companies began releasing low-priced DVDs of Season 1 each place with a different cover design. One distributor said directly in an industry meeting, "The law allows it, so we do it." What made things more confusing was that many releases had to replace the original music because they didn't have the audio rights, making the experience noticeably different. A technical crew member recalled, "I watched one version. The background music was replaced with cheap guitar sounds. It was strange. CBS scrambled to salvage whatever could be saved." A manager said, "We spent an entire week reviewing old files, only to find out that the mistake came from one employee taking a vacation on the exact day the submission was needed." A seemingly small incident, but one that created consequences lasting many years. 11. The role that killed the career. The Jethro curse. Surely you haven't forgotten the image of Jethro Bodine, the naive, hilariously funny young man from the Beverly Hillbillies. This character became an inseparable symbol of Max Baer Jr., bringing him fame and tremendous success. However, this very fame also created a kind of frame that was not so easy to escape from. After the series became famous, Baer was repeatedly rejected for other roles because his face made directors immediately think of Jethro. An agent once said directly, "They don't see you, they only see the character," Baer replied. "But I know how to do many other things." In one audition, the director watched for a few minutes and said, "You act well, but the audience will laugh the moment you walk out." Baer held in a sigh. "I can't change my face." The deadlock continued to the point where he changed direction, writing scripts, directing, producing. A colleague said, Max said, "If they don't give me another role, I'll write one for myself." And he really did. Baer's story became a classic example in Hollywood when a character becomes too famous. Sometimes the actor has to turn a different direction to survive. A producer said, "Some people think fame is luck, but sometimes it's a very long shadow." Baer did not deny the success of Jethro, but he also understood that to keep living with the profession he had to find a new path. 10. Raymond Bailey. Mr. Drysdale had Alzheimer's disease. There are some characters who with just a brief glance can bring back an entire childhood. And for me, Mr. Drysdale is one of them. I don't know why, but every time he appeared on screen, I could almost hear my father's laughter, feel my grandmother's hand resting gently on my shoulder, and see my whole family coming together through the simplest little moments. Looking back now, I finally understand we weren't just watching a TV show, we were holding on to a piece of memory that time itself could barely touch. And maybe because those memories run so deep, revisiting the final working years of Raymond Bailey hits me harder than it might for most viewers. In the later seasons, he began forgetting his marks, missing his lines, and sometimes didn't even realize the camera was already rolling. Once, when the director called Raymond, "It's your turn," he paused, looked around in confusion and quietly asked, "Which scene are we in?" An assistant rushed over to walk him through every detail, as if guiding a brand new actor on his very first day. Yet Bailey still tried his best to maintain the dignified presence of Mr. Drysdale. A colleague recalled, "He didn't want anyone to see he was getting weaker. He always tried to smile even when he was clearly exhausted. There were days when he repeated one line 3 times. The director gently placed a hand on his shoulder and said, 'It's all right. We'll go again.' Bailey just nodded, a quiet sadness flickering in his eyes. When his illness worsened, the crew had no choice but to let him wrap early. A lighting technician remembered that day vividly. He went around shaking everyone's hands slowly as if trying to memorize every face. We knew he was trying to hold on to something. In the final months of his life, Bailey withdrew from the spotlight he had lived under for decades, spending his days in quiet solitude. For those of us who grew up with the show, looking back at the final images of Mr. Drysdale can stir a heaviness in the heart, a feeling I'm sure many of you understand. Share your thoughts below this video. Sometimes it's these shared memories that bring us a little closer together. 9. The Clampett family was actually billionaires. You may not know that although on screen the Clampett family was portrayed as rural folks who stumbled into luck when converted to today's value, that number is not small at all. The fortune of $25 million USD in 1962 is equivalent to about $250 million USD today. By the time the series neared its end, the script pushed their assets up to $100 million USD, approximately $850 million USD in current value. A writer said, "We had to sit down and ask each other, how would mountain folks live with nearly $1 billion? A producer suggested, just keep their behaviour the same. The contrast is what makes it funny. And they did exactly that. Jed still dressed simply. Granny still kept her old pot, and Jethro boasted his math skills in ways no one understood." A prop staff member recalled, "We once proposed changing the furniture to match their new level of wealth, but the director said, 'Don't. The mismatch is what creates the charm.'" And interestingly, many viewers at that time did not realise the true scale of the Clampett fortune because the million-dollar numbers were hard to imagine back then. Only when recalculated through inflation did this wealth become clear. 8. Buddy Ebsen, a career bigger than you think. Before becoming Jed Clampett, Buddy Ebsen had already built an artistic career spanning many decades. He had danced on Broadway stages, appeared in Breakfast at Tiffany's, played supporting roles in Twilight Zone, and even inspired the early movements of Mickey Mouse. Walt Disney once told him directly during a motion test, "The way you dance has a very strange rhythm. I want to put it into the new character." What fewer people know Epson was originally chosen to play the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz. But the aluminum powder used in the makeup caused him severe breathing problems. When the doctors demanded he stop immediately, he only said, "I still want to continue. But if I can't, then so be it." This incident forced MGM to replace him, leaving behind one of Hollywood's most famous almost roles. After Beverly Hillbillies, Epson did not stop. He continued to make his mark with the role of Detective Barnaby Jones for 8 consecutive seasons, a rare achievement for someone already famous beforehand. A director commented, "Buddy has inner strength. He doesn't rely on any single role. Looking back at his entire career, he was one of the few television actors who passed through many eras while still keeping his own identity." 7. Donna Douglas. Ellie May. Clampett was chosen among 500 people. I once heard that the casting session for the role of Ellie May Clampett that day lasted so long, the recruitment team had to take turns because of exhaustion. More than 500 candidates walked into the audition, but when Donna Douglas appeared, the room suddenly fell silent. She did not try to appear charming or overact. She simply walked in, smiled lightly, and said, "I really do take care of livestock in real life. Do you want me to hold a pig or a chicken first?" One director looked at a colleague and whispered, "She is the character." Douglas was born into a poor family in Louisiana. The exact background the character Ellie May needed. When trying the scene of petting animals, she handled it just like on a farm, making the animal trainer laugh. "I'm free today." Those who watched the audition tape said Douglas had what they called authentic without acting bright eyes, natural posture, not trying to impress. And when the decision was made, the producer only said one sentence: "She makes the audience like her from the first second." The role brought Douglas to national television, her face appearing constantly on magazine covers. Yet she kept her same humble style. A crew member remembered, during breaks, she carried cats and dogs around the set like she was at home. That success paved the way for more behind-the-scenes stories, especially the thing critics at the time did not accept at all. 6. The age rumour. That was completely misunderstood. The rumour that Granny was actually younger than Ellie May spread for years among fan clubs, especially back when there was no internet to fact-check anything. Some people even insisted they must have just done the makeup for fun. Granny doesn't look that old at all, but the truth was nowhere near that rumour. Irene Ryan, who played Granny, was actually 31 years older than Donna Douglas. The confusion began with the way Ryan worked. On set, she moved so quickly that one assistant once exclaimed, "She runs faster than the young actors." During one scene where Granny was supposed to get angry, the director joked, "Irene, if you keep this up, the kids won't be able to keep pace with you." She simply replied, "As long as I've got the strength, I'll keep performing." Her sharpness and energy often made viewers think she was aging backwards. Meanwhile, Donna Douglas, with her bright face, natural charm, and innocent acting style, often made people assume she was very young, even though she was already over 30 when the show began. A crew member remembered Donna looked like she had just reached her 20s. Standing next to Irene, the real age gap became even harder to guess. Back then, newspapers didn't help either. They loved highlighting Donna's beauty, but rarely mentioned the actress's real ages, unintentionally giving the impression that the age difference was much smaller than it actually was. When a reporter once asked Irene about the rumour, she just burst into laughter. "If I were as young as Donna, Hollywood would have to build a statue of me." And so the rumour lived on, stubborn and persistent. But the truth, as always, was much simpler. And from this small story alone, you can already tell the behind-the-scenes world of the Beverly Hillbillies was full of things far stranger than anyone imagined. 5. Jethro once played 2 characters. The idea for the character Jethrine, the twin sister of Jethro, began as just a joke in the writer's room. But when they imagined Max Baer Jr. in a country-style dress, the whole group burst into laughter and decided to try filming it. Baer walked out wearing a wig and a long dress, and said in a high voice, "I feel kind of stupid." The director replied, "The more stupid the better." Baer committed himself to the role so much that the crew had to remind him to take breaks. One time he joked, "If my mother sees this, she'll probably lock the house." Jethrine's female voice was not performed by him, but dubbed by Linda Henning. She said, "He acted with his body, and I handled the voice." The two of us created a character that made everyone laugh. Jethrine's costume was made so quickly that the seamstress had to say, "Don't move too much, just one loose stitch, and it's done." During filming, the crew laughed so hard they had to stop many times. A cameraman said, "The way Max glanced sideways as Jethrine, no one can forget it." An actor playing 2 roles is not rare today, but with the limited technology of the 60s, it was a major challenge. 4. The secret of Sunny's real surname. The character Sunny Drysdale appeared several times, but what made audiences curious for decades was that her real surname was never revealed. In the script, everything about Sunny was clear, personality relationships background. But when it came to writing her full name, the writers left it blank. Someone in the writing room asked, "What surname do we give her?" The team leader replied, "No need, just leave it." This did not come from some intention to create deep mystery, but simply because the team wanted to keep Sunny in a half-socialite, half-free spirit state, not tied to any specific family besides her father, Mr. Drysdale. An editor said, "If we add a surname, the character will have too many unnecessary details. We wanted Sunny to be like a vivid piece of personality, not locked by a background." However, when the audience noticed this oddity, the topic, "What is Sunny Drysdale's real surname?" appeared across fan letters and clubs at the time. One reader once asked, "Is her name long or short? A German surname or an English one?" CBS responded very simply, "There is no surname." Interestingly, the actors also discussed this on set. 3. Animal training. The soul of Ellie May Clampett. Frank Inn was not an actor, did not appear on screen, but almost every animal in the series was trained by him. From dogs, cats, raccoons, to even a kangaroo, all of them followed Inn's commands as if they were performing choreography. When the crew discussed a scene with the kangaroo, an assistant worriedly asked, "Will it stand still?" Inn just shrugged. "Let me talk to it." During filming, he bent down and whispered into the animal's ear, "Now stand here, look to the left." The director outside the monitor exclaimed, "How does he make them obey like that?" A crew member said that Inn never used strong commands. He only spoke softly sometimes, using treats hidden in his sleeve. "They really like him," the crew member said. Ellie Mae's scenes were only as natural as they were because Inn stood outside the frame signalling each beat. Donna Douglas once said, "Without Frank, I wouldn't know how to calm the raccoon at all. One time, a cat ran off the set causing panic. Inn just waved, 'Leave it to me.' He walked behind a truck and came back a few seconds later carrying the cat as if nothing had happened." 2. Barbie Ellie May and the Mattel lawsuit. Everything started when Donna Douglas saw a new toy on a shelf, an Ellie May doll produced by Mattel. The image on the box was a black and white photo of her, but without any permission. Douglas said, "I looked at it and said, 'Wait, that's my face.' When she asked a lawyer, she received a direct answer. They didn't ask you. Mattel at the time claimed they were only recreating the character, not using her personal image. In a discussion, a company representative said, "We respect Miss Donna, but this is a product model." Douglas's lawyer replied, "Then why is her photo on the box?" That question shifted the entire conversation, and the lawsuit was quickly filed in court. A crew member recalled Donna didn't want drama. She just didn't like the way they used her face without asking. When the matter spread to the press, many analysts predicted Mattel would pursue a long legal battle. But eventually, the two sides chose a gentler solution, an out-of-court settlement with undisclosed details. The incident ended quietly, but it marked one of the rare times an actor from the series confronted a major toy company directly. 1. Max Baer Jr., the Hillbillies' Casino Dream. Max Baer Jr. was not only associated with the role of Jethro, he was also the person who held the commercial rights to the Beverly Hillbillies brand. And from that right, a bold idea was formed to build an entire casino themed after Hillbillies right in Nevada, along with a nearly 200-foot oil derrick as the symbol. When presenting the plan, Baer told investors, "I don't want an ordinary casino. I want a place where people walk in and recognize Hillbillies immediately." Someone responded, "You mean a real oil derrick?" Baer nodded. "Yes, the more attention it draws, the better." The project initially received many compliments, but to turn the idea into reality, he had to run around applying for permits, negotiating land, bargaining with the town. One official once said, "The idea is good, but the oil derrick needs to be reconsidered." Baer just smiled. "If there's no derrick, then it's not Hillbillies anymore." While pushing the casino project, Bear also pursued another plan, obtaining the rights to Madonna's song Like a Virgin to use in a dark comedy film he wrote. Although the casino never materialized the way he dreamed the story of Bear's ambition shows, he was never confined to the role of Jethro. He always looked for ways to do something bigger, even when it required touching boundaries that Hollywood and Nevada had never tried before. And those are the strangest secrets behind the Beverly Hillbillies. If you ever watched this show back in the black and white TV days, or if any detail in this video surprised you, leave a comment below. I really want to hear your story. Remember to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next episode. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.